I play games to have fun, not to pretend to be smarter than what I am, not to delude myself into pretending that technobabble graphics are high and mighty. No! I believe that the blood of the developers should be shed for what they love, not whatever reason the unholy massive eldritch greed massive corporations are extracting their blood for. Often these flesh monkey corporations amalgamate true passion into their projects, stealing what could be fun experiences and replacing the memories that developers could make with shackles of trauma and debilitating dread. Fuck that. I want to celebrate my favorite games. To the pits with these loot grinder, cash grab, Assassin's Creed 37's looter shooter hallway corridor storyboarded games, and FIFA 2040. There's nothing I enjoy more than the succulent passion of an indie developer. Somebody who can pour their soul into a project that might not even see the sparkle of a singular shiny coin. For example, The Binding of Isaac. I lovingly despise that game. I spent hundreds of hours carving away at a nearly infinite amount of dedicated gameplay. And the ironic thing, it never felt like it was padding my time. It always hurt, and that's the thing. Unless you're part of a very select group of juggernautical studios, the amount of Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate, Resident Evil 4s, these pale in comparison to the schlop, the superb amounts of schlops. Most AAA games don't make me feel at all, honestly. I can name on one hand the amount of good AAA games I've played in the last 5 years that came out during those 5 years. Monster Hunter, Elden Ring, Mario Odyssey. Addendum, Mario Odyssey did not come out in the last 5 years, and I feel old. Tears of the Kingdom, Resident Evil 8. There are a couple more, but I can jump into an ocean of indie games I consider worth remembering, at least. A flood of memories flows through me every time I think of what indie games mean to me. Even the worst game that has turned my brain to soot and made me wish for eternal oblivion, League of Legends, was originally an indie game, before Riot ballooned into the colossal machination of corporatocracy it is today. Games made by smaller teams usually run my life, and I've become a better person for it. And a filthy degenerate as a result of my tendency to try every schlop with a top. Ultimate Chicken Horse, Celeste, The Binding of Isaac, Slay the Spire, Terraria, Minecraft. Yes, Minecraft was an indie game before Microsoft acquired it. Super Meat Boy, FTL, Subnautica, Hollow Knight. I could continue to ramble about the ridiculous amount of indie darlings that changed the industry themselves. But it hasn't always been like this. AAA studios in the West and the East weren't always the way they are now. There are countless, nearly endless video essays about the documentation of decline at Bethesda, Blizzard, Ubisoft, Microsoft, EA. Very few AAA games excite me. I haven't pre-ordered a game in nearly 5 years, and if I do, it's a AA studio, a sequel to an indie game, or just Elden Ring. Because Elden Ring is Elden Ring. There are 3 main reasons I often prefer indie games to AAA. Not to say that AAA can't do it right. There are going to be explanations about what I like, and sometimes I'll use a AAA game to explain it, but often I'll be using indie games to explain what I like. So, scope. It's a fickle thing. Not every game needs gear progression, loot mechanics, level unlocks, deck building, crafting, co-op, 4-player, wave gameplay. I don't want to play Days Gone. I don't want to play every single game under the sun all in one package. I want to play an experience. Yes, sometimes, if done right, side stuff sauces the savorable soup that is single-player gameplay, like in the Yakuza series, but I do not want Far Cry-style sandbox all the time. I do not want Ubisoft churn out on the annual every single game. But let's narrow scope. Literally any single indie game will do. Let's pick a genre. Roguelike. Classy indie genre. Classical too. Often it has too many working parts. Alright, let's take a game from the crowd. You know what? I'll take two. Hades and Going Under. Two deeply different takes on a diverse genre. But both. The scope for both is fine-tuned for the same thing. Character building and story progression. Because Aggro Crab specifically talked about this in an interview that my favorite YouTuber put in one of his videos. Here, I'll put the segment here, and I will link the video in the description.
The thing where I read a quote. Overall, when it came time for story and roguelikeness to butt heads, story generally won out. It's more important to us to make the satire we want to make than to make the tightest systems possible and go toe-to-toe with Hades, for example.
I don't think you'll see this video, but if you do, thank you so much for being so kind to me. Let's focus on story, because that's what gives Going Under and Hades their charm. But by different coins, they both heavily rely on narrative to drive player action forward. One of the main payoffs of Hades is serious storytelling, and that gameplay that is pushed forward through that storytelling is unified through the gifting systems and collectibles you collect on your runs. But Going Under, it doesn't do that. It uses its gameplay and makes the story the driver of gameplay be a comedy. The mentor system seamlessly integrates this comedical storytelling with gameplay. What other game has you set shit on fire? Both of these games would realistically suffer from weird RPG level mechanics, 5-pet systems, and extra deck builder. Just because, yes, I'm talking to you, Gwent Final Fantasy, because the gameplay loops are stretched out both so thin and yet are incredibly tightly wound. Now, not all games need this tightness. Some experiences can canvas good stuff across a wide array of activities. But the problem is when the game is developed in a way where everything is developed at once without connection, so it feels hollow. One of the main issues I have with Ubisoft games is their gameplay doesn't feel connected. Far Cry games often have this problem where their side missions don't add anything to the actual story, so it becomes kind of like padding. The lack of scope focus turns gameplay that could actually be fun on its own into something that feels unneeded and unnecessary. Obviously, there are ways to make things like this feel warranted, but a lot of it comes down to the fact that everything is put on a map and everything feels planned. It doesn't feel like you're creating experiences for yourself. Alright, let's move on before I talk about this for like 3 hours. Issue 2 I have with most AAA games is they're fighting for too much of your time. One huge mistake AAA devs often make is, over the last 2 decades, they decided that we are consumers who want to play every single game forever. We don't. We really don't. I speak for everyone here. The reason we play games like Fortnite, Apex League, and Warcraft is because they're fun. Not because we want to play them forever. It's the gameplay loop we crave. Whether it's the thrill of domination or finding the most low chance drop in the game or socializing. We play them because they are fun. The issue is, there's not an infinite amount of time. For example, Tarkov is only popular because it's the only version of an extraction shooter that's acceptable. Because that is fun to some people. Not because people want to play it forever, which is one of the main issues I have with those devs, because they decided they want everyone to play forever. Warcraft is fun because of a lot of reasons, but one of the main things I think I see people play it for is bragging rights. People love to show off their cool gear and stuff like that to other players. One of the main draws of MMOs and the reasons people play them for so long is not because they want to play them infinitely. It's because they want to show off their stuff to other people, and so they're willing to go to great lengths to make themselves feel cooler in other people's eyes. And for themselves, you know. But no one gamer really wants to play 6 hours of live service and then 8 hours of gacha forever. No player has 24 hours a day for both MMOs, 5 gacha games, Valorant. It's not easy to play a game that's a live service game and just drop it, because these games demand so much of your time. Which is why it's a shame that a lot of these AAA developers, instead of spending their budget on single-player experiences, and experiences that can be experienced one time, are playing these long con games to an audience that doesn't care. It seems like nowadays, AAA devs want the same thing over and over again, for you to be trapped in their game, quotation mark, instead of actually putting the fun in front of you. What I deeply enjoy myself, which I know isn't as common as just relaxing, drinking a beer, and playing a FIFA, is games without padding. I know often AAA devs add excessive padding to their games via grinding and battle pass missions. I don't want to do that. I want to explore lovingly crafted worlds, experience finely tuned experiences, and play games with gameplay and story that it has an ending. I would put an exception to this, and that is the Dark Souls. Fundamentally, Dark Souls is still expansive. Elden Ring is expansive, but they keep all of the gameplay intact, and they make sure that you're having fun the entire time, and that's their priority. Delivering an experience. It may not be the most happy experience, but it is a fine-tuned experience based on gameplay, and that is one of the very few options I can see in making a game good. Gameplay first. The third thing that indie games can do, and my favorite thing about indie devs as a whole, they often can and do buck trends and take more risks. Like the olden days of the game industry. Celeste, The Binding of Isaac, Stardew Valley, Hollow Knight, Enter the Gungeon, Minecraft, Toho. These are games that are genre-defining, uniquely fresh, that started by 1 to 10 employees at their own studios. They are all so different than what AAA studios would have ever done at that time period. The only game I think... Oh, well, I just heard about Hi-Fi Rush's studio closing. Well, I mean... Fuck. Oh, there's a great YouTuber by the name of Atmuz who talks about Hi-Fi Rush. He's a friend of the channel and a friend of me. I'm gonna post a link to his video on Hi-Fi Rush down here. He's got more success than I do, but that's fine. In the last 5 years, how many AAA games have been sandboxes? How many have had crafting? How much cutscene over games have they had in these games? How many games have had gear scores? How many have had Skinnerbox microtransactions? How many have had microtransaction at all? Actually, you know what game flipped that gambling dopamine receptor in my head on without the actual gambling? Another indie darling, Vampire Survivors. Another game that took a premise not particularly well established and ran with it, using the casino stuff, making it feel so fun. Another game that... Balatro. What boardroom could combine poker with gambling without actually gambling money? You know, this wasn't always the case. Archaic games like Katamari Damacy, Okami, Warcraft, Mario 64, AAA devs weren't always like this. World of Warcraft could never come to exist without a soul behind it. Sure, it latched onto a genre with competition already there, but it came from Warcraft and Warcraft 2, which were risky to make. My favorite games of all time, Going Under, Risk of Rain, and The Binding of Isaac, would have never been allowed under a AAA boardroom. I don't want to leave this video in a state of rage, honestly. The most fulfilling, relaxing time I've ever had is during indie games. They're like gateways to the depths of my happier places. So how about this? I'll slap together a montage of some games you might unironically have never heard of, and you give at least one of them a shot. Thank you guys and girls so much for watching. I mean, I hope this video reaches enough people to make them try a new game, at least one person. Please play indie games and stay safe. That's all I ask.